diapophysis. The diapophysis is this transverse process, this thing that sticks out to the side off the neural arch, right? And if you look at it end on, you can see that there's a little connection of the diapophysis down to the centrum of the vertebra, and that is part of the neural arch that we call the pedicle. Exactly. So that's the pedicle of the neural arch. And then dorsally, there's this plate of bone that comes over the top of the spinal cord, and that would be the lamina. Okay, so lamina and pedicle together make up the neural arch. Intervertebral foramina. Do people have trouble with those? That's because they're not on the vertebra. They're in between the vertebrae. So if you take two vertebrae and stick them together, there's a hole between them right there, between the pedicles of successive vertebrae. And that's called the intervertebral foramen. And that's where the spinal nerve comes out of the spinal cord and runs out to the body. Okay. So hard to see unless you put the vertebrae together. Accessory process. Okay. The accessory process is not seen on all of the thoracic vertebrae, but only on the more caudal thoracic vertebrae. So I have to switch to a different thoracic vertebra here. Hopefully get these to orient. Are those even thoracic? No, these are. Okay. So if you look here at these caudal thoracic vertebrae, this is lumbar, these are thoracic. Notice this little prong sticking out there? That is the accessory process. And the lumbar vertebrae have it as well. Okay. All right? Good. Okay. So how again are we going to tell the thoracic vertebra? What are you going to look for?
Well, one, the thoracic has an extra process underneath, ventrally, right?
It does?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's a lumbar. We're not there yet. We're talking thoracic.
Oh, wait, what was the question?
How do you tell a thoracic vertebra?
From a lumbar.
No, well, from anything. Just what distinguishes?
Oh, ribs.
Ribs, or
Yeah.
places where ribs articulate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, just checking. Okay, yes, this is then a lumbar vertebra. And the lumbar vertebra, compared to a thoracic, has this prong sticking out to the side. And that would be called a...
That's a zygo.
No, it's in that little box that I wrote up on the board.
Oh, wow.
That is a pluripophysis, which literally means a side prong sticking out, plura meaning side. And what this represents is actually a rib fused onto the side of the lumbar vertebra. Okay. So that's a pluripophysis. Here's a thoracic vertebra. It does not have one. Okay. And we've already met the accessory process here. Okay, do you see that little guy sticking back? But then the lumbar vertebrae, maybe go further back for a moment and see if we can do a better region. I just feel like it's hard to get these things to work when everyone's staring at me. I don't know what that is. Okay. And got another one. Go a little bit further back. Okay. So, do you see these extra little prongs sticking forward here? These guys? Those are called mammillary processes. And that's another special thing that you find in the lumbar vertebrae. Oops. Got it? Captured for posterity. Okay. Excellent. Okay, sacral vertebrae. Sacrum. There we go. That's it. That's it. Caudal vertebrae, chevron bones, or hemal arches. Those actually, I don't have a good view of right now, and if we have a moment at the end, I'll see if I can find you one. Cervical vertebrae, the transverse foramen I already mentioned. This hole that you see here in the transverse process. Okay, so that's a very characteristic thing of the cervical vertebrae. The first two cervical vertebrae here, usually they, for some reason, I don't quite understand why, but usually they kind of swap them from how they should be sitting. No, they were all right. Okay. These ones are actually correct. The first vertebra would be called the
Atlas.
atlas. Second is the
Axis.
axis. And the atlas has these big wings that stick off to the side. Okay. There is a foramen in those wings here called the alar foramen. Do you see that? There. And then there's also, in addition, still that transverse foramen here ventrally. Okay.
Transverse frame.
Right there, yep. The second cervical vertebra is the axis, and the axis has this big prong that extends forward, and that would be called the dens, or odontoid process. Dens is like dental, means tooth, and odontoid means tooth, so it looks like a tooth, hence dens. And basically what happens is that the atlas can rotate around that axis, and that's where we get most of the rotation. And it's worth spending some time with these vertebrae, if you haven't already, just articulating successive ones and playing with them and seeing what kinds of movement are possible, because it varies along the length of the vertebral column, depending on the orientation of the zygapophyses mainly.
I thought it would like screw up the cartilage and the notochord of that joint, having that process just flipping all around.
Well, yeah, there's a ligament that runs across that kind of holds it in as a socket, and then this is actually a synovial joint there between, meaning it's got a cartilage that's lubricated by a joint fluid, so it can, synovial fluid, so it can move more than just the intervertebral disc between most vertebrae. Yeah, that's pretty cool.